We're going live in a moment. 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 Testing, testing. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're going live in a moment. We're going live. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. We are live. We are live. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. Welcome to my chat. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. I'm waiting for you all to come on in. It is 6:01. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. And we are live. And so I want to invite you all to my new podcast. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. Yeah. Welcome to my podcast. My name is Quintella, and these are my adorable pets. And so when I said come on in, they came on in. They did what they were supposed to do. Well, my name is Quintella, and I came in because I was inducted into a club in which, come on now, in which I didn't apply, never received an invite to, had never really heard of. And on October 25th, I became a member. So I'm going to ask you to stay with me as I take you through what that membership entailed. So on October 25th of 2021, late one night, I was asleep, and my phone just kept ringing and chirping. My husband said, somebody's trying to reach you, and it sounds like it's urgent. And I'm going to ask my pet, stop. Stop, Isis and Ron. And I jumped up. And by the time I got to the phone, it stopped ringing. And so I grabbed the phone. And when I looked at my phone, it said, Romy is missing. Have you heard from him? I had not heard from him. Stop. Rod and Isis, stop. I had not heard from him. And so I immediately called the person who was on the other end. And they said Jalen had been shot, who's Romy's cousin. And Romy and Jalen had went outside together. But nobody had heard from Romy. I didn't want to panic. I didn't want to get upset. So what I did was I said, well, let me call him because maybe he's not answering you guys. And so I called his phone. And when I called his phone, I didn't get an answer. While I was calling his phone, one of his other friends called in and said, hey, I just talked to Romy. He's okay. So I got ready to lay down, and my husband says, well, that's strange because you just had a friend to say they couldn't find him. Try the other friend and see what's going on, because he said he wasn't in the same location. So when I tried the other friend, he said, no, that was wrong. The number that the person had called was Romy's phone, and he didn't have his phone with him. You guys stop. Isis and Rock. Carter, come get them. Because he didn't have his phone with him. And so I called the number again. And nobody had heard from Romy. So by now it's a little after 12. I called the friend to where he was at his house, and one of his friends picked up, and he said that the police had been there. He had just arrived at like 10:30. Somebody said they were going outside, and they both went outside. He didn't have a lot of details. And so he just knows Jalen came back to the house and he had been shot in the chest. But nobody knew anything about Romy. So he said the officer was there, and I asked to speak to the officer, and the officer said to me that the police had located another individual. He didn't know the condition of the individual, but he knew that the individual had been taken to the trauma unit. Now, I live in Illinois, and my son was staying at that time in Arizona. And so I immediately hung up the phone. I looked up the number to the hospital, and I called that hospital. But there were, before I could call him, I saw there was 2 hospitals with the same name. So I called back, and I said, hey, which hospital was it? And he said it was the trauma unit. And so then I called that hospital back, and they told me they couldn't release any information because I didn't have a code, and that the police should have provided me with a code. Well, I didn't receive the code, so I called back. I didn't get the officer, and I was unable to get an answer on Romy's phone, so I couldn't get a code. I constantly called like every 15 minutes. I was calling up to the hospital. I need some information. I was calling his friends. They were there. No one was giving them any information. So now it's almost 2:30, and I just stated that I was going to call until I got some information. I called back about 3 o'clock, and the receptionist had me on hold, and she said, well, do you have the code? And I'm like, no, I don't have a code. And I'm explaining to her, I'm in Chicago. I'm in Matson, 30 minutes from Chicago. My son is in Arizona. I just need to know, is my child okay? And she put me on hold. She came back and she said, unfortunately, due to HIPAA, I can't release any information. And so I began to pray. And I kept saying, I'm just going to call back every 15 minutes and they're going to have to tell me something. Somebody's going to tell me something. And so my husband said he had to step outside because it was too much. And I think he wanted to go have a cigarette break. And when he walked outside, maybe 5 minutes later, I received a call from Maricopa Trauma Hospital. I can't even think of the name of the hospital. I saw the caller ID as it went across my phone. My phone was in my bathroom suite, so I immediately jumped up. I grabbed it. And the person identified himself as the surgeon. I'm sorry, the ER surgeon. And he said that they had received Romy. He gave me all these medical terms about, when the paramedics arrived and they attempted to resuscitate him and they gave him all this treatment and they rushed him over to the hospital. And then he said at 11:49, Romy had expired. I didn't know how to interpret the word expired when it came to a human, especially my child. So I couldn't process it, and it took me a while to process. What does expired mean for a human? You know, I know milk expires, and then it's no good. Food expires, and it's no good. But what do we mean when we say a human expires? And so, as I was trying to process the word expired and my child's name in the same sentence, all of a sudden, I lost control. My legs just gave out. And then it dawned on me, expires means death. And I was overcome with so many emotions. Because that's not the order. Parents don't bury their children. And so I could then feel the coldness of the floor. And I can hear the doctor saying, I am so sorry for your loss. I am so sorry. I am so sorry for your loss. And I kept trying to process the expired part. And then it felt as if my heart just fell into a million minute pieces. And I'm just so overcome with these emotions and pain and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know how I was going to tell my husband that our child had expired, or his siblings. Oh, God. I knew I couldn't stay on that floor too much longer because I had to. Uh, I was going to have to bury my child. And that was actually the time and the moment that I was inducted into that club that I was telling you about. And in that club, it is parents who have lost their children. There's no rules. The only criteria is that your child has passed away, expired, died, has murdered. There's no handbook. There's no etiquettes. Uh, you basically figure things out as you go. And so since I became a part of that club, I keep running into other parents and mothers who are also members of the club. And we all have the same struggle, have the same hurt. And so I said I would start a blog for us and I would share my experience so that it helps someone, because during that process, I'll tell you, I thought I was losing my mind. I was mad at God. I almost lost my faith. I was mad at the world for taking my child. Oh, I was so mad at the city of Maricopa County in Arizona. Well, the county. But I was so upset with Arizona. They say they're a safe town. And they don't have a lot of murders. But in 2021, my child was murdered there. And it's a long process. And so I'll come in every week and I'll share how I'm doing in that moment. So I ask those of you who know someone who knows a parent or a mother who's lost or a child was murdered to invite them to this blog, because we're all members of the club. We all need each other's support. It's been 3 years and I'm still crying. Someone said to me, crying is healing. I'm still in therapy. And so I'll ask that you guys come in, and that maybe if we're in a community, a space where we're together, that we can all learn to cope. Possibly mend the heart, start making sense, because it makes no sense. It's totally out of order. Um, and maybe come up with etiquettes for those people who don't know what to say to us. So for now, I'm going to say it's hard. And the hardest part has been for me waking up, knowing that I will never see my child again in the physical, laying down at night, knowing that I didn't hear his voice. And maybe we can have guest speakers to come in, someone who's had 20 years experience of this, to share how are they coping. Because we don't want to exist. We don't want to just be going through the motions of life. We want to experience the fullness of life. And some days are hard. Doesn't have to be an anniversary. Doesn't have to be a birthday. Um, it doesn't have to be anything. It just can be a bad day. And I think if we all understand that we're going to have bad days, we're going to have horrible holidays, but still we have someone to support and make their day maybe a little better. So I'll keep doing these on a weekly basis. I'll ask you all to chime in. We'll do questions and answers on our live. I'll be here for you. I hope you're going to be there for me. Pray for me. I am going to pray for you. We'll make recommendations to each other. What are you doing? I have other children, but I'll say I loved all my children. I love all my children. And no one can take the other one's place. So I know that part is hard. So I want this to just be a blog where the members of the club chimes in and we chat, we cry, because I think that's what we do more than anything. We cry. We'll celebrate. We get to talk about our children. We might be able to come up with some etiquettes for those who don't know what to say to us. Who think we're just ignoring them. We're not. So I'll ask you again to just pray for me. We'll talk about the trial because my son went through a trial. Next week I want to talk about going through the stages of preparations for the burial. Then the trial. Then going back to work. You know you got to deal with the people, your haters anyway. Now how do I deal with the haters? Because now I'm already waiting on somebody to go off on. Because I'm already mad. So how do I grow? How do I become a better me? You know, I'll say this before we go. I will never be the Quintella from October 24th of 2021. She's gone. She was naive. I can never be her. I'm new. I'm evolving. I'm trying. When I describe myself to people now, I used to say, oh, I'm a mother. I'm an educator. I'm I put God first. All these things. And now what I say is, I'm a mother, an educator, a grandmother, and a mother to a child that has passed on. So, I thank you all for coming in. I would love to do an hour segment, but 30 minutes, as you guys know, is a lot. So it'll be 30-minute segments. I'll ask you to come in on a Sunday at 6 o'clock. We'll be done by 6:30 because that's the start of our week. And it'll hopefully build us up for what's to come in the week and get us through. So thank you all for chiming in tonight. Keep on coming back to The Club with SRT Big Shugg on YouTube. That's the end, everybody. See you next week.
Hello, Grandma. Grandma?
I see a question and answer section. I think we're done.